Okay, it's streaming, but I don't know if it goes anywhere yet. I gotta do
I haven't received a notification.
yeah, so let me go to my YouTube channel.
There, I see you're on now.
Hello, if anybody's tuning in already. There it is. And so I need to pop out the chat. Hello, old school Dave. Wow. Happy freaking 4th, he says.
That's
Well, I hope you're having a good 4th also. A freaking one. So let's see here. I'm still setting up. I don't have this streamlined yet. Probably never will. So I'm now live streaming on my Sawyer Facebook page, Sawyer Heaven's Gate. For anybody who doesn't know it, if somebody wants to see what I have to say about stuff, it's been pretty quiet lately. Um, so let's see, what else do I do normally? I haven't been putting it on Twitter, X. Oh, I could do that right here, unless it's going to ask me to. Uh, oh, I can't look at that up right now, so I'll have to look for that in the future. Because I used to post on Twitter also everything I did here in terms of live streams. Okay, well, with that said, I labeled this, it's not the best name in the world, but The Seven Thunders Part 1, because I do want to talk about that a little bit. I'd like to do streams to where I'm touching on a few different subjects with each one, because a lot of times there's a lot to talk about, of course. And so, like one of the things I plan to include in this has nothing to do with the Seven Thunders. Well, I mean, that's actually it does. It's one of those thunders, in my opinion. I'm not going to talk about what they are right now, but it comes from the USA Today information advertisement that Doe paid to publish in USA Today on I think it was July 27th, 1997. No, 1993. Wait, May 27th, 1993. Gosh, if I don't use it, I lose it.
Mm.
But I think I did finally arrive at the correct date.
Mm.
Um, but um, but in that document that he put, it was like about a $30,000 payment to have that third of a page put in that newspaper. Both the international and the national edition of USA Today, and there's a lot of words crammed in there. It was put into like, I don't know if it was 10-point type, like a Times Roman kind of 10-point, uh, but it was almost too small to read for many people. But then, if they really wanted to read it, people would use a magnifying glass, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so Doe wanted to get maximum punch. I remember when he was talking about it, he was thinking about how can we get our information out? Who's going to publish it? Nobody wants to really interview us and then publish exactly what we say. So he said, well, we're doing pretty well with our finances, so let's, what do you think about this? And he would run things by the class, even though, that in itself was a exercise in how to work with an older member. Um, because because the older member is interested in what his older member is giving him, which was T outside her vehicle, her human vehicle that she took as Bonnie Nettles, as the story goes. And so he was constantly, I mean, that's what he told us and showed us actually by being there with him, you know, week upon week. Um, you got to see exactly how he worked, even if you weren't living in the same location where he was sleeping. Of course, individuals that were in that circumstance, they got a even bigger dose, in a sense, of his mind, because his mind actually was um, constantly being. He constantly wanted updates to anything that he was doing, but he wanted them from T. But part of the way the next level does things, because it's a free will environment in the human kingdom to a large degree. I mean, we can't change the way the continents are and stuff like that, even though some are trying, I guess, like by building islands in the North China Sea and stuff. But um, but we can make choices about how we think about things and how what we believe and what we don't believe, and so the next level is always ways using uh, those older members that came incarnate and the younger members that came incarnate in those vehicles that we saw, that the individuals that were with him and graduated with him to their next station in the next level. Everybody doesn't go to the same place necessarily, and or they might at first, and then who knows, they might be split up into different crews. We don't know, but that's the way the next level works, and people in the next level, also new members to the next level, they get to choose what departments they want to work in, but sometimes there's a certain amount of um, uh, getting acquainted, and for the new member of the next level, they want to do anything. They're not gonna. They don't have anything in their minds that says they gotta, be part of the creative task of making new human or animal vehicles and things like that. Uh, you know, Whether they get to go into one of those labs or not, might depend upon what uh, is next after they finish working with the planet Earth and the human kingdom on it, trying to seek out, because of the choices of humans, those that are thirsting to grow, thirsting to learn more and understand more about their origin and what there is to aspire to in modern, uh, uh, generic kind of thinking and terminology instead of the religious thinking and terminology that has degrees of very strong degrees of next level thinking embedded in it because of how they developed to begin with, but doesn't give you the clearest sense of reality because it's filled with, it happened so long ago and hearsay and translations and interpretations and all the things that have happened to the words from older members in the past, which might include the Buddha uh, or Krishna and Arjuna and Vishnu, that trinity, so to speak. I don't know that Doe ever talked about it that way, uh, but he certainly did talk about how the Buddhist experiment was another experiment, and they, because of the way that it was designing, it was portraying development towards God as being um, breaking our human addictions, even to family and even to sensualities of all different kinds of sensuality, and and the whole reproductive nature, if you want to put it that way, of the human kingdom, the mammalian way that we have programs embedded in all of us, and we also have embedded in all of us some next level mind. And the next level gives vehicles more of their next level mind, and that's in the form of deposits. Uh, and a deposit is like a soul, that is a physical container, plasma like. I want to make sure I put the words in there that came from Tiando's mind that demonstrate more accurately what they said. Because if I left it as just saying plasma vehicles, that would be like putting an absolute on it when Tiando didn't do that. And they're far more wiser than I am, but I think we all stand the best chance of helping others that want to see the truth of the information that they brought, by learning to incorporate as the highlight, as the primary terms we use with the terms that we were given by Tiando and crew to use. And so anyway, and you can see that there's a variable characteristic to that, and to where people are sure that we can become like scripture quoters, and saying, well, he didn't say that because he didn't use that exact word in that context, and therefore you're producing blasphemy when you change the words a little bit, or you put in other words that you think demonstrate the same reality, and you're expanding on it, and of course that sometimes is the case, and people are expanding on things like I have that don't even know I'm expanding on, or I kind of have a sense that I'm doing it, but I've justified it in some way, and it may be okay to have justified it in some way, because we don't know what Tiendo would be thinking right now. But as a safeguard for us, uh, before we're going to give our words associated with things that Tiendo have said, I think it's going to be a process. It's always a process because you can't grasp everything. I don't think you can grasp everything Tiendo said by just reading it once. I mean, maybe some people can, and but if you think you can, you're probably not correct. I'm going to say probably because there could be an exception, of course. But I know from my own personal experience, and I don't count myself as that intuitive or that good of a memory or that intellectually, with really good characteristics of understanding what I'm reading, and because there's so many. When Tiendo wrote something, like the USA Today ad, T wasn't involved in directly, but a lot of the information that came with that through Doe in 1973 or 1993, I'm sorry, um, came from development from being with T. And they're both pulling on their older members' mind to to recognize the things that they then would know were from the next level, as opposed to being given something from the space aliens. That can kind of appear to be like the next level, unless there's somebody that with the kind of mind that Tiendo had. But even they, um, that's why they were here. That's one of the reasons why they came as two members, older members. I can think of a lot of reasons, but one of them that they talked about was to be a check partner for the other one, so that if one got something and the other one didn't get that same thing, the one would either come to understand it or would understand it right away. Those were the two ways that Doe described the way they got new information, and sometimes it meant talking about it and then thinking of the ramifications and the applications, and then they would have to think about what is the lesson here or the multiple lessons that are positive to bring to the group, to the class. And that's when they would hold meetings. And sometimes they would hold meetings that were just question and answer sessions based on previous things they brought to the group to consider. So I encourage everybody to listen to the audio tapes and read the book, and that's the source. I'm not the source. I'm a student of that same source. And so what I do, um, uh, um, I mean, there's extremes to what I'm saying in this regard, but for the most part, um, the only things I really have any desire to receive any correction on, I'm not, the word correction to me is, it's not a great word to use. I, I admit to using that word sometimes regarding uh, things I might say to somebody else, and I think that's a poor choice of words in that case. But in reference to me and being corrected by the next level, even though it can come through anybody, um, I want that correction, and I'm going to examine it because it's not automatically correction. Even if I say something to somebody that is trying to correct their terminology or their thinking, if the thinking looks like it's not what T and Doe were teaching,
If it's off track.
yeah, because it gets us all potentially off track.
Yeah,
Of
and
what?
it's easy to get off track.
Yes, it is easy to get off
We're
track.
surrounded by lower forces that's what they want to do,
Right.
is get us off track.
Yes, exactly.
They love to make fools of us.
Yes. Yes, they do. And so we're all capable of getting off track. And we try to recognize how we're getting off track, so that when it happens, um, we can recognize it faster.
Mhm.
And I'm talking about in the context of the kind of task that people can choose to have because Tiendo gave it as getting their information out. And they didn't specifically say the ways of getting that information out except by their copyright, common copyright that they put on their book, which is how and when uh, the kingdom level, the heaven's gate, the door to the kingdom level above human may be entered. That's the formula. That's the goal. That's the overview of the entire classroom that was last given, and they gave that. They left that for us to have, so that we would know the truth. And so, um, yeah. So the lower forces don't want that information out, and so they'll they'll have us even twisting our minds and thinking there's a better way to say it, or I can just summarize
Or
it here.
modernize it.
Yeah, modernize it, right. Um, and use my own mind to actually, because also these vehicles, I'm not talking about anybody in specific, okay? I'm talking about my own personal experience. These vehicles like to think in terms of that they get it, and and that their embellishments are adding to it in some way, or, or actually like even a subconscious way of beefing up our own ego. I know. I remember experiencing that in the classroom when I was a speaker assigned by Doe to speak to the public at meetings in 1994. So anyway, I could tell that I wanted to say it in my own words. I didn't think that way. I didn't think I want to say it in my own words. I thought that I had the confidence that I could express it, and that I didn't really think about it that way. But looking back on it, I can see that I had this, like when Doe wanted us to play the Beyond Human tapes at the University of Chicago, which we have footage of, some of, in 1994, on Carlody's YouTube page, CRLODY on YouTube. Um, Doe suggested that we bring it, get a TV and prop it up and play some of the Beyond Human tape on it, which is Doe speaking. And I remember as a part of me was like, oh, I want to be able to give out the information. I want to, I didn't not want to do what he asked to do because otherwise I would have been a rebel. And I wasn't a rebel. I'm still not a rebel. In terms of the information. Um, I mean, people can call me a rebel because I don't cut my hair short and I don't shave my beard, and for any number of reasons. But um, the real rebelling is when we go against T&O's information being given to us and being or having it uh, available when we want it, if we want it. Now the next level are no fools at all. I mean, so they knew what was going to happen in large part after they left, because it's like observing, like a human observing a dog kennel. But maybe a dog kennel where there's some dogs that are growing very well, and there's other ones that are troublemakers. And so they know how to tell the difference between them, just like humans know that with dogs and other animals. So they plan things in such a way that everything becomes a potential lesson, and they know that if somebody's really pursuing their information, they're not going to stop with one source or one interpretation. They're gonna stress over certain things that T and Do wrote, or mostly that Do wrote and some of the class wrote, because they're so foreign to think about in a human way, and we're all so saturated with the the terminology and the thoughts and the concepts and the ideas that came originally from the space alien souls, um, that went against the next level and are continuing to go against the true next level with all different ways of thinking about it, that are not accurate, uh, as accurate as what Tiendo taught, even though Tiendo didn't, know everything about everything, but they did know about a lot of things that they wanted us to pull out of them, because we needed that exercise of our minds to tune into what they were giving us, and so uh, and by our questions, that's the way that worked. And I was going to talk a little bit about tape 199 some more after the last live stream where I talked about it, and Kathy joined in, and Kathy's sitting here with me. Um, uh, and that's the voice you heard. If you're not familiar with Kathy's voice, um, a few minutes ago. Uh,
Hello. Hello.
there she is, a hello from the distance, far away. The voice is from the distance. No, being silly, but I am quite silly.
Yes, you
Sometimes to
are.
a annoyance probably level.
Nuh-uh.
No, not for Kathy, but um, she's got her silliness too. So I think silliness is a good thing. It's a characteristic Doe had, his silliness. I never saw T's silliness too much, but T certainly had a sense of humor. And anyway, so what I'll do is I'll go to my notes from audio tape 199, and go to where I kind of left off with the last live stream. Talk because of where Doe was talking about how, uh, well, initially that T was saying that there was something from me, she said, that humans can draw from, that is
From
just
T, not you.
right, right. There is something from T that humans can draw from that is just above the human level, that is in that movie that she was referring to, and whoever sees it can draw upon it, and as they think about it. So a lot of clues in their words. They can draw upon mind that T has in her computer banks of her mind that's with that human vehicle, that translates through her brain as it's as somebody draws upon it and then expresses it in some way or does something with it. So and so that was, she was bringing that up in the context of the next level, not even by T's own design, not bringing all her mind with her to be with the human vehicle that she decided to tag and for their use, tag at birth for their use. when they were to come public together. Uh, so, so certain things about how things work, she didn't have in her computer, and other things she had available to her because of that design. But uh, she felt like it was also part of the design that students would pull those things out of her mind by their questions, like I talked about before. So anyway, and that would deplete her energy. And she felt like that was happening during this certain movie that they were watching, that they had to watch several times, try to watch at different times because he was falling asleep during it, which is very unusual for T to do. Maybe not even existent, unless it was just boring. And it wasn't boring, she said. It was interesting. Anyway, so, but see, that's like a perspective of how T identified um, what she knew and what she thought she had access to, according to this design, and and how to bring it out. And it's like if a student doesn't have a question that can bring it out, then that means that that student or that student body hasn't built their own mind into a condition that was ready to ask certain questions. I don't know how else to describe it because sometimes that did happen to students, to where they would bring a question to T and Do, and after T and Do would think about it, they might say, which they did on a couple occasions, say that the student was the instrument of uh, bringing that out. Um, and so I'm relating to that same thing as that can happen with um, well I don't well yeah, I don't really know where to go there because I don't know how to talk about that in a way that's objective, so I'm going to just skip on. So anyway, and they talked about other things then, but I'm not going to go recount those. But I'm going to get down to the next thing. And Doe said, one way to think about it, to make it clearer, is to think that the first human vehicle, or any vehicle, is programmed for everything it can sense, programmed in detail, everything, like writing down a list and saying that the human vehicle will feel this and this and this, and certain ones will be left out, and the vehicle won't know it's hearing things that are out of its range because it's not programmed to hear those frequencies. And so I think I did talk about that in the last broadcast too. But to me, it was like giving concrete evidence to everything else they had been teaching before and after that, that shows how clinical and how the next level is technically um, able to set up this garden to be a hothouse and a training ground for new members of the next level. And with the ultimate being to actually no longer want to be in the human kingdom and want to embrace uh, the next level behaviors and ways that the class was teaching would be the thing. That's the work program. That's the whole process. And for those that were in the schedule of leaving with bus one that we all witnessed. I don't know if there's been another bus after that, because it's not. There's no, there's no way to guess about that kind of thing. How many buses there are, but it, it's each individual comes upon absorbing their mind by wanting to understand everything they're teaching. And that may, you can, and as soon as if we, well, I'll just leave it there. But it's not easy to do that because uh, the mainstream cults, if you want to call them that, even though that's not a word that they really liked, T&O liked to refer to them because they know there was nothing negative in what they were about. But at the same time, they knew that's what humans thought about them. And so they took advantage of it and said, okay, well, you want to call us that? I guess we're the cult of cults. And that, when you're looking down on all the people that were picking up on the separation of somebody from their humanness to some degrees in whatever ways by not going along with the social cults that are established that are considered to be traditional and the best option. Certain people aren't ready to think about that. So, like for instance, like another one of the examples of that, in a sense, is like Doe said in this tape, 199, that a program that the next level gives to humans can be so detailed as how to see a green glass or blue water. And that, for analogy's sake, the program is like a tiny chip, and the absence of those chips causes malfunctions, so that the eyes have deficiencies and couldn't determine color because of a malfunction. Now that's a pretty good overview and example from Doe in tape 199 that we can apply to a lot of things, because nutritional deficiencies has a lot to do with how we think and what we can accept and what we don't want to accept, and the programming that we've received and the way that we've been treated or the way that we see other people have been treated can all, add into what, what of their information we can embrace and what of their information gives us problems, because it's so disruptive to our sense of humanness. Even though it's through our humanness and through the use of these vehicles that we can build our minds stronger and stronger to further clarify the teachings of T&O in our minds and give us the impetus to try to connect with them and want to have service from them. And so I wanted to, but I wanted to say something else about the number of documents that Doe made and videos that Doe made. Like I'm calling the Seven Thunders, which I'm not going to probably just go through each what I believe those represented, but it's the documents that they put out at different times. Each one being, the thunder has to do with the reverberation of sound. So sound through the voice even whether it's in words or it's on a video, is in our minds something that communicates their mind to us, to our vehicles. And so their mind causes not only a recognition of their power, if we can perceive it, um, if the next level gave us that ability to perceive it, and then we drew on that potential and made so that we could perceive it, uh, and and by doing that, we can recognize how much more there is to understand about any one thing that they talked about. So, in a sense, Doe gave everybody a way to think about them in a way that they can get growth from recognizing, and and yet at the same time they told you right up front that to become a member of the next level and receive significant service, uh, the requirements were stiff. It meant separating from your entire human condition, uh, um, mentally and even physically, and and that part of it um, was talked about uh, um, as something that um, well, that requires an older member to take you through the steps of learning what it is of what needs to be overcome. It's like two people in a new relationship of some sort, um, getting to know each other and learning which things uh, about us, the person might have difficulties with, and learning to address them and work with them and try to change the things that might give somebody else difficulty. That's if we're committed to that relationship in that way. And and so that could be approaching things that can be dear to our heart, so to speak, and changing those things. But that, if the older member are the ones that can look at us objectively. And that's one of the big reasons why they need to actually be in person with students on a regular basis to actually know that they themselves are really there for all the right reasons, and that it wasn't some desire to have a ride on a UFO, or it wasn't to get get out of this vehicle thinking that they'd then be ascended masters, or or something like that, and they'd be teaching humans, and because that's again ego boost. When the next level doesn't need anybody to take those kind of positions, because the next level doesn't even take those kind of positions. They they are working for their older member, so they don't look at the students and think, oh, that student is you know they'll see that one student will have certain capacity to do certain things or think a certain way, or express themselves a certain way that is clear or whatever, and someone else might think kind of in a more jumbled kind of spaghetti way, like I think I did to some degree, even though I probably demonstrated both. I mean, I know I did, because sometimes when I was talking in a meeting, asking a question, sometimes Doe would say that that's a way to look at it, whatever I was looking at, uh, and other times he would say to students, that's not the way my mind looks at it, and you can accept that or not. And so, but that would be something to change for a student, because the way that Doe was looking at things wasn't a human, wasn't Marshall Applewhite looking at things. The Marshall Applewhite mind was agreeing to not interfere for the most part. It was like standing off on the side. Uh, it was even in support of what Doe was doing. I think he said at one point that even his vehicle um, was trying to be in service to the next level. Anyway, so let me jump down to. I recognize I already did talk about this as well in the last tape, that humans didn't discover anything. Next level gave them everything. Doesn't mean that they didn't put out the effort to do things with it, because it's not just a matter of discovering something. How many people could probably sit around and think, I know I could make a new blah blah blah, and they never work towards doing that. So the humans that are given the impetus to understand something by the next level uh, probably were picked by the next level because they had a capacity to put something, they had enough of a drive and enough of a relationship with whatever facilities were available to try to start, doing some tests and things like to put electricity to use, like in the story that we heard about Ben Franklin with the key that he was put on a kite string. I don't know if that's true or not. It doesn't really matter. Uh, it could have happened just that simply as a first spark kind of the idea, and it could have happened in some other way. But in one way or another, the next level gave him that, and it doesn't mean that he was the only one that was given it. There could have been, a number of people around the world that were given the same kind of understanding. But it's up to the next level to decide who and what to give what to. So, and I remember I talked about the labs being any shape or form for its function. Maybe I didn't bring that up. And he talked about how a lab could be a very tall building, but not have to be rooted, but can sit for long periods of time, as long as needed for the place, but is movable, not by spiritual God moved, but by technical advancement, abilities and skills the next level has. And he talked a little bit about how the next level labs can even though they have ways of protecting themselves, they can actually have an accident. It's possible that there could be something that could happen to where the humans saw them or did something to their spacecraft because the next level dropped their guard or and somebody would have got a lesson from that. The thing is with the next level if a human by some way alien, I guess, possibility, did something to their spacecraft or their vehicles, and even let's say they killed a vehicle from the next level, then the next level would take that soul and take it to wardrobe. That's the way Doe would say it, because he was treating it lightly. In that terminology, I think, to get a new suit of clothes, a new vehicle to wear, and then that soul would have had the opportunity to look at what they did, what kind of mistakes they made, that enabled humans to present that danger. Um, yeah, I think I spend enough time right now on this because I want to get to a couple other things. Um, in the USA Today article, but maybe I'll go to the chat first and see if there's anything going on there. I already said hello to Old School Dave, and Zach says hello. How are you guys? And we're fine. We're doing okay. And right back at you. Thank you, Old School Dave. Matthew says hello, Kathy and Sawyer. Hi, Matthew. Gardner Earth Guy. I saw the 4/8 eclipse in Indianapolis. Not sure it's the moon covering the sun. Not sure it's the moon covering the sun. The 4/8. Oh yeah, the April 8th, of course. Yeah. I mean, I'm not one to basically. I guess since you're expressing it here, I don't have any reason to think it's not the moon covering the sun. I think we've been through enough eclipses for centuries that were documented that the human kingdom and even the space aliens, I don't know if they have the kind of technology that could cover the sun like that. It would take an enormous object to do that. And it would have to be an object that could be moved and could block out the powerful rays of the sun. I can imagine somebody could come up with a theory about it. I just I don't see it at this point. Anyway, so Julia Terranova says, hello, hope you, Kathy, and Miss Evie the kitty are doing well. Mm-hmm. Yes, Evie's been sleeping a lot lately. But I think she's fine. Yeah, we're doing fine. This makes for a great afternoon. Thanks, buddy. Well, thanks, Old School Dave. I appreciate hearing that. Because, Kathy knows that I'm wanting in theory to do streams, but then I think that it's kind of like nobody cares and nobody wants to hear what I have to say, and if they do want to hear what I have to say, then I could be leading them off track when I don't ever want to. So I've got my unseen influences that don't want me to do anything regarding T and O's information. When how could someone in my experience not want to give away T and O's information to others? Because even though I have my vehicle has characteristics that can come across to people as arrogant, and I know that vibration. I'm not void of it. I can think that I know that I don't know it all about anything really, because I know for a fact that T and O's minds are so much more advanced over my mind and what I've even received from them that if they were going to answer the same question that I was asked, uh, they would have a way of most of the time uh, uh, addressing the question, even though the participant asking the question might not think they're addressing the question. See, I don't know that I have that capacity to actually try to answer the greater question that I perceive in that question, in any one kind of question. But but it's possible that sometimes I can hit that one on the head, and so sometimes I try because I guess I feel like if I don't try to add more perspective to something that Tiendo said, when they've said so much and said it in different ways for different apparent applications, even that that can be beneficial, I think, to people to hear because the lower forces are also working on the heads of anybody that grows closer to Tiendo's mind. And even before they grow closer to Tiendo's mind, they're being worked on in direct and indirect ways. I'm not saying that people are like, possessed by Satan, by Lucifer himself. Uh, that's probably unlikely to be the case because I don't think any of us could survive that because their minds being outside of human vehicles and having technologies like even on their spacecrafts can kind of overwhelm us. So the next level has to kind of buffer things, and I think they have some automatic ways of doing that. I'm not going to try to describe all that because I'd be guessing too much anyway, but I do know that the overview that the next level regulates what humans have to deal with, even though it's been accelerating recently, in my opinion, with the presence of Tiendo and then even after they left. A lot of evidence of that, in my opinion. Um, so that acceleration is something that we can handle. I say we, meaning those that want to handle it and are growing into uh, um, recognizing consciously more and more of Tiendo's mind as being exactly from where they said they came from, deep outer space, beyond where space aliens can go, and even people on other planets can't go to, human equivalents on other planets, where they have their environment, while they can also be walking on this planet and not be seen by humans. You want a drink of water?
No, thank you.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, it's all right. Bless you, baby. So, all right. So I guess, well, yeah, that was based on what was said in the chat room there. Zach said, I find it amazing that you can live stream for so long. I'd be at a loss of words after 2 minutes. Well, the
Two
only,
minutes.
yeah, I know that's probably an extreme to say, but I mean, if you had something that you worked on your whole life in degrees, not your whole life, but in a sense, your whole life, you could kind of think of it that way for me in particular, indirectly and directly. But it's like having memory banks, but it's more than that because um, the information from Tiendo's mind uh, that registers in our brains through words and images and ideas and perspectives is something that's given to us. And I'm saying all humans have the capacity to draw in their information, but it's kept difficult. The next level makes it difficult so that we strain to receive it, strain in some way. Now, what that looks like, I don't know exactly. Well, I do know because, like when I come upon something that is in any of the documents that Tiendo left behind, and it's something that I haven't considered before, it's because I saw those words, but there were all these other words that were describing things, and they were all, to some degree, foreign to a human brain that hadn't been prepared for those words. And all our human brains, I think, well, most of our human brains, let me just put it that way, because shouldn't ever say things like all, I think, because how do you know what? But I think a lot of our human brains, and I'm saying this because of what T and Do are teaching primarily, but I think I understand it as well, because when we receive that information, we do have a degree of understanding what they were saying. But the problem is when we think that we got it and that there's not going to be any additional ways of looking at it, that's where we can get into trouble. So, so what I hope to do in these kind of broadcasts is say, okay, this is what they said, and and even if I read it, which I wanted to do actually, I still might do with a section of the USA Today information advertisement. Um, uh, um, there's so many words that have definitions through all other documents that Tiendo written, and for years and years and years, we had access to some of those words. So those words form pictures in our heads. And when we know that they came from an older member's mind, because of all the things that they demonstrate, that we have recognition of from the soul deposit that's given to human beings, like this human vehicle, then we start to build an overview of how the next level was working with all the grades in school. So to me, we should never tell somebody that, you know, that this is the only way of thinking, taking one quote or something from, even though we're tempted to do it, and I've done it, and, uh, boy, I did years, I did at least 10 years of going to UFO groups and Christian groups and different groups and not really looking to say anything to them. I didn't just post things there. I would wait to see if there was a comment or a post that somebody made, and then if it felt appropriate, I would give my opinion about it. If it was about a newer UFO sighting, I would step in there and say, well, in my opinion, I was doing this with a different Facebook account, so nobody saw Heaven's Gate in it. Uh, but then I would say, from my experience, that UFO I don't think was from the people that created this planet, but was possibly either CGI or the government or some government um, you know um, or the space aliens even, or doing like a hologram, which Doe talks about in USA Today, that the space aliens know how to do. And Doe referred to holograms as something that they may still try to do. In the Beyond Human tapes, he talks about that. And And so I take all these little things that Tiendo said, and when I see world events happening, when I see different things, articles and stuff that come through that are talking about things that I feel like I've got something to say about, I'm trying to bring a way of identifying the reality we know each day as we're living and watching the news and everything that happens to the degree that we are, uh, into focus relative to what T and O were teaching, as opposed to what all the other conversations are talking about, um, and claiming to be from God or from a space alien or from government officials or whistleblowers or talk show hosts or politicians or whatever it is, and because we have access to this rare information, um, from Tiendo's mind, and it's there's so much packed into every paragraph that you could do a complete show on every paragraph in the USA Today ad, information ad. I'm calling it an ad because in order to be able to say what Doe wanted to say, because we had enough funds in our kitty, um, he decided to buy the space, and that worked. Laying it on the line, telling the human kingdom, through whatever people would read that ad, whether they accepted it or not, whether they just told it, well, this is a strange joke, or whatever they thought about it. He addressed pretty much everything you would really want to know in an overview, but to use that overview as a way of understanding what's happening and being able to even offer that perspective to other people so that they can start to form, if they haven't formed it already, in their own way, they can form new pictures of how the next level may think about this and why, which in my mind can lead to somebody wanting to know what other things Tiendo said about what could be thought of as happening today, because they weren't operating in a time frame of uh, you know days and weeks and months and years. They're operating a different time frame that I don't know how long it's going to be, that we have this ability to have access to their information, see Doe's face, know that he's the one that's talking, and what he's talking about, and why he's talking about it, and what the ramifications are. I don't know how long we're going to have that ability, but as Junodi says in the Away Team document, it's just a matter, the space aliens are in competition, and so they want the humans to be in competition with what the space aliens believe is competition for everybody, because they think that, rumor has it, according to the USA Today ad that Doe wrote, that they're about to be recycled. And the Earth is about to be spaded, and that the lower forces, the space aliens and any humans that are in league with them, in a way that can significantly alter things that are happening on the Earth, are going to accelerate. In other words, they're going to be doing things to assist the next level, unknowingly assist the next level with the spading under. Now, I don't know if that means, wars, more and more, but I think that was also talked about as part of what happens. And, I think all the individuals that become the victims of those wars, Doe talked about in USA Today ad as well, information ad, that they get accelerated in other words, their mind, their spirit, or their soul if they have one, whether they grew it or not, and growing it's a process. So, you know, it's not something that you can ever say, well, I've got a soul and so therefore I'm saved. Well, maybe you are, but you still won't be any more than you are from what you do with that soul and what, you know, how you live, and everything's involved, and that's between us and the next level. But um, as far as trying to speak for the next level, I'm not speaking for the next level. I'm talking about things that they either said to me that I heard for myself firsthand, or from things I read when I constantly read their articles and their documents,
Or from listening to the tapes.
or from listening to the audio tapes and the videotapes. Yeah, but the audio tapes especially, because that appears to be the biggest demonstration of in-depth information about what they're all about. That they put in the letter sent to Mark and Sarah, encouraging them to put their information out. I think the tapes represent that statement the best, because the book doesn't, it gives you a lot, but it's all the bottom lines for the most part. It doesn't give you the in-depth, nitty-gritty work that everybody needs to learn to engage in different degrees in different areas when they feel to, in order to show the next level that they're progressing. And that's required. The next level wants to see us seeking to progress. And we don't know how to judge that necessarily. But, I mean, we can't judge it, because it's not up to us, because we don't know the timing of it. We don't know when somebody's going to take a major step and when they need to be relaxed, and to let the steps, you know, sink in, which can take who knows how long for steps to sink in. I know it took me years to see some of the things that T gave me when she was in her vehicle that I needed to work on to be included on the spacecraft lab crew. And so that's why, you know, I would stay away from telling anybody what to do. I'm not telling anybody what to do. I'm saying what T and Do gave us to do is what there is to do. And the whole picture, it's huge, it's big, it's difficult, and it's not, everybody that engages it, especially engages with them in their minds, will be given the beginning transition, will be given that soul deposit and the ability to begin their transition into becoming a member of the next level. And that takes time, and studying their information is probably the biggest form of preparing for that. And that can take a while, to where you can, you know, learn to try to answer questions. Well, I'm not the greatest example of answering questions succinctly, because you can say too little and you can say too much, you know. And I'm guilty of both, but mostly I'm guilty of saying too much, to where it becomes confusing to people. And so but it's meant to be difficult. It's not meant to be just like a course that you can say, here's the list of things you need to do, and here's how you do it. You start with this, and then you go to this, and 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 this. And when you get down to the bottom, then you know the course. You know, you can teach this to other people. It don't work that way. That's why they need an older member to come present with us. Because there's too many ways that we can be completely misguided by our own interpretation of things and what other people say about it, and everything can be influencing us. It is difficult to stay on the straight and narrow in terms of only looking to them. That's one of the prerequisites, is to look to them as for our direction, for our service. And if we don't want service and we don't want to overcome our deficiencies or don't want to be corrected and by them, correcting the course, that we're on, and they'll let us get off course, and they'll let us, go do whatever we want within reason. But if there's somebody that they know is being really led astray by the lower forces, and they give those people help too, so nobody is without the ability to get help from them, even if we don't know the names T and Do, and we're just looking for the highest source we can imagine existing to help us sort through things and stuff, because this world is it's probably somewhat accurate to say it's almost impossible. It's definitely, I say it's almost impossible without T and Do's mind to withstand the barrage of misinformation and disinformation and malinformation, however you want to label it, that we're all surrounded with, even without the news and everything. It's in the thought waves. It's in the ether. The discarnates that are dead humans are filling the airwaves potentially with their thoughts, and even influencing us with the thoughts that we have. So I can just ramble on and on, right? So that's not a problem for me at this point. It's the other way around. I can find solace in, taking breaks. Old School Dave says, "Geez Louise, bless you, Miss Kathy."
Thank you.
Oh yeah, when you sneezed all that time. Well, I'm glad you can hear, Kathy. Fine. Okay, well, I kind of covered some of the things in the USA Today, but let me at least read something from there. There it is. And I didn't put this on my screen yet. I guess they'll figure out how to do that. I get mixed up sometimes with how to bring my text pad in there. But so I'm just going to jump right into USA Today. The title of it is UFO Cult Resurfaces with Final Offer. Now you'll see that Doe was talking about a final offer a lot. Does that mean that that document was the final offer? No. The whole body of information, each time he was adding to, had its application. Doe wasn't like saying, this is the final offer, so anything we said before this was being updated. Some of the things do get updated in terminology and concepts, okay, but the overview of it doesn't really get updated in any significant way, because Doe knows what the standards are, what the the qualifications are, and who he's talking about, who his older member is, and what they're attempting to do. But this ad was put in May 27th, 1993. It was called USA Today, in quotes, ad statement is what they called it. and it said UFO cult in quotes resurfaces with final offer. Well, the UFO cult word came about from 1975. The media referred to the group as a UFO cult, but also the UFO term came from the first posters, some of the first posters that were used in meetings that students created when they joined up T&O and decided to do a meeting in another town, which is an example of what happened when they came to the town where I was living in Walport, Newport area of Oregon, and at the time, and they put up a poster on the telephone pole advertising a meeting they were having in Walport at the supper club there, and I saw that and went to the meeting and recognized this. This was exactly what I wanted to do, even though I didn't understand why I felt that way. It just all made sense to me, and I felt like there was nothing that was going to stop me from diving in, which I never regretted doing. So, what Dove says after he talks about who they are and where they came from, and that they're not temporal anymore, and humans are temporal. In other words, they only exist for a certain amount of time and then they're gone. So, at this point, he's talking about the souls who have reached a certain degree of corruption. In other words, have gone against the next level. And he says, all other souls who reach a certain degree of corruption, having of their own free will chosen to become totally separate from their creator, will engage a self-destruct mechanism at the age's end, manifested when opposing camps, be they human or Luciferian, and destroy each other, thus assisting in the plowing under of the garden for the Creator. I'm going to go on and read more of this. The reason the term true kingdom of God is used repeatedly is because there are many space alien races that through the centuries of this civilization and in civilizations prior have represented themselves to humans as gods, in quotes. We refer to them collectively as Luciferians, for their ancestors fell away from the keeping of the true kingdom of God many thousands of years ago. They are not genderless. They still need to reproduce. They are nothing more than technically advanced humans who have retained some of what they learned while in the early training of members of the true kingdom of God. For example, limited space-time travel, telepathic communication, advanced travel hardware, spacecrafts, etc., increased longevity, advanced genetic engineering, and such things as suspended holograms, as used in some religious miracles, in quotes. These Luciferian space races are the human's greatest enemy. They hold humans in unknown slavery, only to fulfill their own needs. They cannot create, in quotes, though they develop races and biological containers through genetic manipulation and hybridization. They even try to make deals, in quotes, with human governments to permit them, the Luciferians, to engage in biological experimentation through abductions in exchange for technically advanced modes of travel, though they seldom follow through. For they don't want humans of this civilization to grow to be another element of competition. They war among themselves over the spoils of this planet and use religion and increased sexual behavior to keep humans drugged and ignorant in darkness while thinking they are in God's keeping. These Luciferians see to it, through the social norm, the largest Luciferian cult, in quotes, there is, that man continues to not avail himself of the possibility of advancing beyond human. Many things have become the accepted norm, but that doesn't make them right. Um, okay, just gonna read a little bit more, and then I'll be done with this part of my live stream, unless there's some questions from it. But it says, he goes on to say the Luciferians are about to be recycled, annihilated, at the same time as this human civilization is spaded, in quotes. They know that, rumor has it, in quotes, that their days are numbered. So he's talking about the Luciferian people that we're calling the lower forces, being the space races and the humans that are in support of them, knowingly or unknowingly. And so that their days are numbered. They refuse to believe it and are desperate to recruit souls from the human kingdom into their heavenly kingdom. Desperate to recruit souls from the human kingdom into their heavenly kingdom, in quotes. There are many counterfeit heavens, and each heaven is at this time collecting names in their book, forcing a stand of allegiance, polarizing each to his chosen God. So this, to me, when I see this, working against each other, and look at how that's been happening, especially in the United States, but it's been happening all around the world for a long time, periodically here and there, but happening on the actual continent of North America hasn't really been seen in a big way. The way that people are being pitted against one another. So in other words, the ones that are in league with the space aliens, which most people don't know that they are. They don't recognize it, but they have an agenda that is against the truth from the next level. Of course, the religions don't demonstrate the truth from the next level unless somebody actually goes to the original texts and examines what the older member said. Because the next level, like for instance with Jesus, Tiendo said that the next level worked very hard to keep what Jesus said, available through the translations and through the councils of what became the religion known as Catholicism originally, and then broken off into all the different sects of it. But but it's interesting how I'm not saying how Tiendo would see this, but you look at the things that are happening in the United States now, especially, but all over the world, but with the escalation of reasons to justify people in high places in government to support wars. War is not a behavior of a member of the next level. They don't kill each other. They don't hit each other. They don't abuse each other. They don't take advantage of others. They don't. They're positive, and they're kind, and they're considerate, and they're thoughtful, and uh, they're more. They want to know how to do things in the best way they can do them, and by the standards of their older members, which are always higher than ours, because they're just wiser from more experience. It comes down to that. It's just knowing things because souls are real, So this isn't an illusion of a soul like the religions kind of teach an illusion of a soul. And but the beginnings of that idea came from the next level, and so it was appropriate what they were given 2,000 years ago, and 4,000 years ago, and 6,000 years ago, and before that in previous civilizations. Um, but but it's also appropriate to outgrow it. And once somebody gets invested in the human kingdom, and they make a success in the human kingdom, and they get more and more popularity, or they make more money, or all things related, and people are looking up to them, and they're supporting a whole bunch of people because of their businesses that they create and things like that. It might be almost impossible for them uh, uh, to think in certain ways about what's happening now. And but you never can tell when somebody can wake up more and yet be in a position to where they can help certain circumstances in the human kingdom. And I don't know if that's happening now, but you know, uh, the at least the desire to make things more difficult. And I don't know if that's all happening automatically because of the way things have been going for a long time, like the inflation and putting more and more pressure on people to be able to have their basic necessities, even though sure all our necessities could probably be scaled back, and we still find ourselves, having a certain amount of what we need. But uh, but when we have trauma, when we have difficulties, that's when we can grow. And it might take, depending on what the trauma was, will will have a lot to do with, and the person being able to grow from it, because there might be a lot of pain suffered from certain things that happen, losing a loved one and so forth. And but the souls of everybody, I'm going to say souls regardless of whether somebody has one or not, because even curiosity is enough for the next level to potentially give a human vehicle a soul deposit that they can then choose to grow or not. But but they're actually judging themselves. I remember I was doing this show somewhere where, like an arts and crafts show, and these Christians were walking from tent to tent, of the vendors that were selling their goods, and would say, something about the Bible and being saved. And I remember I said to them that uh, God doesn't judge us; we judge ourselves. I mean, ultimately, God judges us when the members of the next level decide that we've either become nothing or we've become something to save for a future opportunity. And if we become nothing, then they're not saving anything, because something doesn't come from nothing. Uh, Not that I know about. Even though something can come from a speck, like T said one time in a meeting. You know, which is, you know, yes, I understand that because the genetic code, you know, of each cell is like a speck in my mind. That's the way I interpreted it. She didn't go into details about that at the time, but there are many counterfeit heavens. In other words, there are people think that they're going to heaven when they die when they live a certain good life, and that doesn't mean they're going to the heaven where the creators are from. It just means they're going into a counterfeit heaven. Now, those individuals, those souls are that move into that counterfeit heaven, not thinking that it's a counterfeit, but I don't think they're dead unless the next level decides to recycle them. But they can become, I think, part of the new crop of Luciferians for when the garden is resurfaced and they get rid of the space junk and whatever else they want to get rid of to start a planet from scratch to some degree. They can get rid of all the parts of the garden that is not good for the early growth. But because that early growth will also choose to go in that same direction again of going against the creators, because they will still have that programming that they had when they were a human that got them into that so-called heaven. It could be someplace in the near space around the planet. It could be like even a spacecraft that is in orbit. I would imagine might be one option, to where the lower forces might select certain humans to take their vehicle or to take just their soul out of that vehicle on their spacecraft to use that, so that soul will then take over a hybridized biological container that they grew for that soul to take over. So in that way, they get a new crew member. Now that crew member isn't going to know anything more than they learned while they were in a human vehicle. And so all the things that that soul might have known that they didn't bring into that new vehicle because it became too weak of a voice is going to remain that way. But the next level could then choose to give them the option to go through the human garden again to experience what we're experiencing now and what the class experienced when they were with their older member on the surface of the planet. So that, in other words, they get more choices, more chances, that even though they sided with what they didn't know was a false god, the next level would still probably give them the opportunity to choose to go in that direction again. Because, like T said in the Black Hawk tapes, even Lucifer was given many opportunities to correct his course. And because the next level doesn't need new members, so they make it's difficult, but they give you all the help you need. So nobody has a justification to feel like they can't do it, because there's no can't for next level members. And so, you know, it's so if somebody's working on themselves in whatever way to improve themselves in the eyes of T and Do by the information they left behind that describes what that is, then I would hope that we would all be encouraging of that if we find out about it with somebody, and not, you know, I'm not saying, I know the tendency, there's all kinds of characteristics that are not next level characteristics that can, people don't even know it necessarily, that they're actually getting competitive with others. And, you know, for whatever. So I'm not going to go any further with that. So did I read this part yet? I don't think I did. So I'm going to read a little bit more from USA Today, Then I'll go back to the chat room. The Luciferians about to be recycled. Oh, I read that already. Okay, then well, I encourage everybody to read this themselves, and every word that they don't understand, ponder it, and even do text searches of how they use that word through their other texts. And if you have a question that I can help you with, I'll try to help you with it, because I have been engaged with their text and their minds for a while. And I don't want to give you something that's not from their minds. And I seek to correct myself or be corrected by somebody else if I do. But I don't want to be corrected by somebody giving their opinion. I want to, I'm trying to give you the text to go along with my opinion about the text. So I'll go to the chat room now, and then I'll finish probably with talking about the Seven Thunders a little bit. Finch is here. Good evening, everyone. Nice to see you live. All right, so there's no new questions, so I'll just go right to this Seven Thunders talk that I put the top of this. Well, it's from the what's called what T and Doe called the records. Mostly Doe, I heard saying using that word, the record books. Which includes the Bible, but there's parts of that that are not necessarily accurate, or from the next level's mind, or from or hasn't been distorted more than other parts, and it continues to be messed with. And sometimes it's good the way that individuals are changing, or introducing new words to the definition of terms, because if anybody studies these languages at all, Aramaic, Hebrew, or Greek, and the way that these documents were written in those languages, they'll find that to almost every word there's multiple ways that word was used, and multiple definitions according to the context and so forth. So you can change the way something comes across if you have some ideas about how the words that they chose might be limiting the understanding. And that's what I've attempted to do in the book that I wrote. I stayed with what Jesus taught, but mostly his prophecies, and the Book of Revelation, and that's almost entirely what the book is based on, except I gave experiences that I had in the classroom. There's plenty of that too in the book, but most of it's spent on the different ways of reading the scriptures and relating that to the different things that Tiendo did and talked about. So when it said Revelation 10 that I saw another mighty angel come down from heaven, that's the only time that we saw that depiction in this. Revelation 10 is part of uh, um, the sixth trumpet sounding in the chronology. And each trumpet sounding was like an alert, providing ways of thinking. And there were always, it seems like, when I analyze this, and I'm not saying I got it all right, I don't know what percentage I got right and didn't get as right or wrong, but I was looking for always like three things that would be said to kind of talk about to justify my interpretation of any one scripture. And so I noticed that when they put the word mighty angel, that word mighty is kuros in the Greek. And it was used as mighty, it was used as strong 9 times, strong man 5 times, boisterous, powerful, valiant, and and that was used like to depict certain members of the next level, which the word angel depicts as a messenger, as messenger being the task, because the next level, for everything that's being done is done as like a task. It's a job. It's a if the member of the next level gets a task to give certain information to a certain human, then that would be their task, and they would do it according to the guidelines of their older members, and they wouldn't be told everything to do and necessarily say, because it would be up to that individual to try to work with the circumstance, and that human is receiving information through, because of how their brains can only handle things in a certain way. So generally there's repetition and things said in a certain way that kind of differentiates, um, well, strata of next level members. In other words, older members from younger members, or archangel from an angel. Archangel being a captain of angels. Okay, so a captain of a crew, and that's what Doe considered himself to be, like the captain of the crew, and a number of his crew members were with him in vehicles, and picked those vehicles to be of service within the human kingdom by earning sticks in certain ways that made it easier to live with less work and things like that, and also picked vehicles that could write things down well or speak well, well enough, or to help to potentially help with the tasks that need to be done by the older member and their crew that were outside of uh, physical human vehicles that they were taking over. So I think this strong representation of a strong angel is talking about the soul, Jesus, which was also depicted in Revelation 12, in my opinion, as Michael the archangel, who related with Daniel in some of the books of Daniel. I think that's where in some of those books of Daniel, he talks about two individuals, and one appears to be like the Ancient of Days, and the other one appears to be like that individual's son. So I think that's talking about the Father and the Son, or Jehovah and Moses, or Elohim and Adam, or Elohim and Enoch. Uh, like we're talking about T and O in repeat tasks. They know these tasks because they've done it. They know what it is to overcome the human condition because they've done it. They've done it themselves, and that's why they can teach from experience. And they know a lot of things about it, how to do it. They have the best information on how to do it. And so they don't beat around the bush. They tell you in every document, they tell you the process is meant to adopt 100%, to become a member of the next level as quickly as possible. And that doesn't mean going off and getting rid of your vehicle. If it means that, I don't know about it at the stage we're at now. But I go by what they left behind, which includes the document that says our position against suicide. And so I believe they put that in the Heaven's Gate website as its own document so that would be very clearly stated, even though it can be a little bit difficult to understand because they talk about two different forms of leaving the vehicle. We'll actually talk about a number of forms of leaving the vehicle, like accident or disease, or because of somebody that doesn't like what you're saying and they want to stop you from talking about it, like happens with whistleblowers and things in the governments and things. But anyway, whether that would happen to us, I don't know. I hope not, because Doe felt like maybe that humans were more civilized than that now. So he didn't know that anybody would have to go through that this time. Because it certainly isn't something desired to be, harmed in any way physically. And to harm our own vehicle physically isn't something that they desire to do either. And to treat the vehicles really well and keep them as clear-headed and as they can be. And at the same time, understanding that this is a mixed up world, and the dichotomy between the mind, the way that members of the next level think, and the way that humans think is vast. In terms of you can only take so much so fast. In terms of, I'm not saying everybody's in this circumstance because everybody's got a different package to overcome, and everybody's package is of some equivalent, but where they're not equivalent, the next level helps those individuals in ways that they've got more of an imbalance in a certain area of their chemistry and their mental chemistry and their physicality and their mind capacity, or their brain capacity, because mind and brain go together, but mind is actually separate from brain, and continues to live after the vehicle perishes. So but it's really not called living, because if you're not in the next level with that mind, then you might never actually come back into a human vehicle in a way of taking over that human vehicle. But then again, the next level could do that with you as well, if they feel like you've got that potential. And that's where the stage of development is at. So anyway, I'll go back to the Revelation 10. So this individual is also described as a rainbow was upon his head. And the other place where rainbow is used is in Revelation 6, where it refers to um, the rainbow in that context seems to refer to the covenant that the next level has with their student body. So it's referring to upon his head, meaning his choices. The covenant is a headspace. That's part of his mind that forms a covenant with the people. Like you've heard probably if you study the scriptures, that the God had a covenant with the children of Israel. And yes, I believe that there was a agreement between the next level and Moses with the humans that were the souls that were the vehicles that souls were taking in order to grow those souls in that circumstance towards becoming eventually ready to graduate. Uh, so that's that's what I think is meant by clothed with a cloud. Also means that he's hidden. Cloud always meant a covering, and it could mean a covering of a spacecraft, but it could also mean like when it says clothed with a cloud, that's saying that that mind, that mighty angel, is wearing what a human would think of as a suit. No, what a next level member would think of as a suit, which in the human kingdom is a human vehicle. That's what clothed with a cloud would refer to. So that human vehicle becomes the covering that disguises that mighty angel, so that humans look at that other vehicle, and if they don't sense something, and they won't even know that what they're sensing anyway, uh, that individual is hidden, is like a thief in the night in the sense that they can come and go in the human kingdom. They can do things in the human kingdom, and they can find those vehicles that other souls were taking over in order to bring them into a concentrated, accelerated classroom of learning so that they can go through the remaining lessons that they each have as souls to learn, uh, with the specific teachings on how to conquer this characteristic and this characteristic. Conquer their tendency to get angry and lash out at somebody that they felt like did them some harm in some sort, and or to be in competition with somebody. So, or to try to up them, be one up on them or something, or to actually physically hurt somebody, which would be way beneath any student of Tiando's information. I don't know what would happen in a defensive circumstance, a truly defensive circumstance. I'm not trying to say that somebody would be wrong to defend themselves from being hurt, or defend even somebody else from being hurt. But because that would be up to the person that's experiencing it, and with their intention of looking like to the next level for help, and who knows how the next level could help them, and even help the other person not be harmed, even if they're being hurting somebody else. Something can happen, and if something doesn't happen, well, then it's a more difficult lesson. But it doesn't mean that it can't be something to overcome. But those are the kind of things that the next level is probably not going to pick vehicles to put a deposit in of their mind if that person has next to no ability to control their vehicle. If they let the vehicle do whatever it wants to do whenever it wants to do it, and even has negativity on their mind that they let out in different ways. Um, uh, I mean, everybody's got the chance to do that, but they themselves might do that and then really realize that I did that and that was a terrible thing to do or say. And they can repent of it and they can try to learn from it and they can actually apologize to the people that they might have offended and and they can. I'm not, I'm just trying to be general here because this is what we all go through. Whether we assign it to becoming a member of the next level or we just want to get along with our family or our spouse or our friends or our government or you know.
Do you have anything to apologize for?
Yeah, I do. I do. I talked about in my last stream about somebody that had left some messages. So I'm glad you brought that up, Kathy. Thank you. I did actually want Kathy to bring that up, but I forgot about it for tonight. And so I didn't mention it to Kathy. But I use certain terminology and I can come on pretty strong sometimes. And I can, maybe there's some arrogance in me that I'm letting out. I know that influence can be with me, so I'm not above it. Um, but I'm also not. Uh, I've never been. Well, I'm not in a mind to. Well, I don't know. I can always improve upon everything I think and say and do. I don't know that there's, that can be taken to an extreme, of course. But, and so I don't want to offend anybody. That's why if I am talking about somebody, I don't use their name. I never do. Unless, unless I'm talking about somebody that wants me, I don't know that that happens very often, but probably has a couple times. Um, or somebody that I want to use the name because I think it's important they know who I'm talking about. And like I've talked about those named Mark and Sarah many times, which I don't want to talk about now. But um, but yeah, I can get overbearing. I can drive things home, in a way that's overbearing. Giving too many examples, and but at the same time, I really wish I could somehow, um, which I might do more and more, which would be to predicate what I say if I'm trying to bring something up to somebody that I know that they may take in a way of feeling bad about or feeling like they were put down in some way or offended in some way, um, that can let them know right up front that uh, my interest isn't to be that instrument to them of something that they may need to overcome. I'm not the teacher, so I'm not giving instruction to people. I'm not, telling you, I shouldn't be telling you that you can or what you can or can't say. However, my first loyalty is to standing up for what Tian said. So if somebody is saying what Tian said, but then they're saying it in a way that I don't identify with being in any of the literature, then I think that they either don't understand what Tian said about that, or maybe I missed something about that, and so I go back and want to look at it to see if I missed something about it, and I can be corrected from that. And that can happen sometimes. It just has happened recently, and so but I'm not. I don't feel like I want to. I'm going to apologize. I don't feel like I did something wrong by saying to somebody that that's not what I believe Tiendo said in that statement, and that we need to look at other things they taught before we're going to tell somebody something that could affect their belief on Tiendo. I don't know. So I'm not really trying to get personable with anybody. I mean, I've met some people in person that have been, listening to my blog sometimes or my live stream sometimes, and I think they probably get a different impression from me and from what they may think otherwise. But well, did I botch that or did I? I mean botch it, but I mean, did I just talk in circles or?
I don't know.
You don't know. Oh gosh, I'm not sure what else I can say. Well, you see, I've been. This is not. I'm not saying this justifies any things that I don't say as well as my older member would say it. Though they can be direct many times, I just don't have their perspective. I mean, I have limited parts of their perspective, and so I don't want to be in that position. But if someone's going to ask me questions, then I'm leaning more now to just telling them where they can find their answers. But I'm trying to give people enough of an overview to where they'll want to go look and read for themselves the things that Tiendo said. And um, because I'm not going to disagree with anything that Tiendo said, regardless of how difficult it is to address it. There were clearly three types of people that would leave with uh, with Doe and crew, and his description of leaving, wasn't limited to the spacecraft that took them in 1997, assuming that that's what happened. Well, they got on board some spacecraft. Whether it left this atmosphere or not, I don't know. Whether it went to the moon, behind the moon or somewhere, or inside of a planet, or out to Pluto, or to someplace else. I have no idea. And so, what I do know is that they're working with people on the planet right now in their own ways, however they see fit. Okay, so the other thing in this the Seven Thunders is says that his face was as it were the sun, and that reflects to how Jesus said that uh, a member of the next level would be somebody that made their whole body filled with light. That'd be one way of looking at
We should eat
that.
at Sugar and Spice.
What about Sugar and Spice?
That place, that diner.
Oh, we should eat there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
People are saying they have the best pancakes in Cincinnati.
Oh, really? There you go.
Let's eat them.
And that his feet are as pillars of fire, which refers to other things. And that means that he's standing on purging his vehicle of its fire. That's one of the ways of looking at it, like a pillar. And you can see other references to that in other places in prophecy and and what Jesus taught. Anyway, so then he says, so I'm saying that this is the same soul that was Jesus and is now known to us as the vehicle that was called Marshall Applewhite that took the name Doe when he fully knew who he is, because he's not dead, even though his vehicle's gone. Anyway, and so the next verse says, and he had in his hand a little book open, and he set his right foot upon the sea, and his left foot on the earth. And I could go through that, but I'm not going to go through all the definitions of all those terms. According to the way I understand it, right now I have written about it, and I don't know where those documents are anymore, but there are probably some videos about it, and cried with a loud voice. So now he cried with a loud voice. That means he's putting out some ideas, some thoughts, some actual voice. That word voice is it's the word phone, and it says it's probably kin to through the idea of disclosure. It's a sound. It's noised abroad. It's a tone. And what do we have as a name for T and Doe but tonal names through that song, in that movie, The Sound of Music, which Doe even references in this same document of the USA Today. I think it was that one, or maybe it was The Planet About to Be Recycled one. And Doe's Final Exit is another one where I keep reading different documents and sometimes I don't remember where it came from exactly when I try to cite it. So this is, recent events has caused me to dig more, to try to do a better job of presenting T and Doe's information. That's why I've written so little, because when I start to write about what they've said, I want to be more and more thorough about it and not leave anything unturned. And I don't feel at this time that I'm doing some disservice to T and Doe by doing that. So then he says, and he cried with a loud voice as when a lion roars. And that's referring to Revelation 5, where it talks about the lion from Judah. Again, a reference to Jesus being from the tribe of Judah. And so and being referred to as a lion, as opposed to Lucifer being referred to a lion also, but in a different word for it. And when he had cried, the seven thunders uttered their voices. So in other words, when he had cried meaning to croak, to cry a raven, hence to cry out, to cry aloud, to vociferate, to cry or pray for vengeance. I don't know that Doe would be interested in vengeance, except for the fact that the lower forces were trying to keep people away from the next level, and they need to get the ramifications to doing that. And the next level, who created them in the first place, have the right to get rid of whatever is influencing other people beyond what the next level wants to allow them to be influenced by. So cry out aloud. Speak with a loud voice is another way of describing that. And I think Doe did speak with a loud voice. And T did too, but Doe, especially in those exit videos, boy, did he speak in a loud voice. Anyway, and loud meaning, almost like shouting, right? I mean, almost like difficult to handle. Doe's direct expressions, especially after the Beyond Human tapes, where he was being more gentle about expressing everything, because it wasn't the right time to be as strong as he was being. And they call it Seven Thunders, which again, the word thunder comes from the Greek word bronte, which is akin to brimo, to roar. And there again is another reference to the lion roaring. So what's coming out of his mouth is a very strong expression of the truth that somebody can uh, rebel from and uh, be eventually recycled if they keep on doing it, or they can take it as a lesson, whatever it is, of understanding, or whatever it is they feel like those saying in these roars, which I'm associating with the main documents that they put out directly. Uh, so, uh, so the seven thunders uttered their voices. So in other words, each of those roars, there were seven of those roars, or seven periods of time. But then those things were sealed up. So in other words, this prophecy, if he got it right, John, when he was writing it, because Doe said he didn't get everything right, uh, was not wanting to. These things that we're talking about now. Uh, weren't being expressed in that first crying, the first expressions. So I think one way to look at that would be like uh, um, the teachings that T and Do gave while T was in her vehicle, even though they were the same teachings that Do continued, and then put together the changes that T and Do had both knew would be provided after they left, which they talked about throughout the audio tapes, some of the things that would happen after they left, and was also talked about in the Heaven's Gate book in several places. Um, uh, those would be the things, I guess, that most might want to qualify as the seven thunders, and I would think that those were associated with uh, the well, the way that Junodi described it in the intro of the book, I associated with the first thunder being what the two witnesses were describing. So in other words, when T was in her vehicle, everything they were teaching was that first thunder. And then it goes on from there to be the second one, in my opinion, being the Beyond Human series. Because the way that Junodi described it, the 88 update, that was becoming part of the Heaven's Gate book, that would later be posted to the internet. All these things were also had a degree of international exposure to them. Everything that I'm talking about. Beyond Human series went up on satellite dish. So potentially was seen by anybody around the globe that had a way to get to it. And then it was put in the Heaven's Gate book, which, it's on the internet, so it's available for anybody to look at and study. So, and then, so the Beyond Human series was the second one, in my opinion. And then the third one, in my opinion, was the USA Today information statement that I was talking about earlier. and but that included, in my mind, I could be wrong about, the placing of a document that was like that USA Today advertisement ad, uh, was talking about that they reformatted it. June Arty was the head of that task. I don't even know if she had a check partner in that regard, but Doe might have been. Well, Doe would have been acting as a check partner because I'm sure she was sending what her writings were in the changing of the document that Doe wrote for USA Today. Uh, and then, for all I know, Doe made all the changes. But if June Odie made some of them, also Nor Odie and others, Lib Odie and Jan Odie, could have easily been consulted by Doe on saying certain things, because what they ended up doing is putting that same equivalent publication in many alternative newspapers around the planet: New Zealand, Australia, Scotland, England, a number of places in the United States, a number of cities that had markets for those periodicals that were called like Pathfinder and I forget the names of a lot of them, but there's probably a half dozen different things that you will see in different like health food stores. I don't know if they're there anymore now, but Omni I think might be one that I don't know if that was one, but the list is in the cities that they went to is in the Heaven's Gate book. Okay, so that whole effort of the USA Today and then all the other ones, I'm considering is the third Thunder, which since that started in 1993, I think that's kind of interesting, right? That the 3 was in there, and the Beyond Human series was the 2. So, but that just may be a coincidence that has no relationship at all, because the next one was 1994, and that was in person, where we were going around holding public meetings again. So I believe that was the 4th Thunder. Then the 5th Thunder, I believe, was when Doe published on the internet to chat groups and things, Undercover Jesus Services Before Departure. And then he made another document of some equivalence with that, but he called it Extraterrestrial. I forgot the name of it exactly, but you can look it up. It's in the Heaven's Gate book, and you'll see that he changed certain things in there to give a more generic approach instead of the Jesus approach. But even in the generic approach, using less religious terminology, he did continuing to use some religious terminology in order to show the history, because it's almost impossible to not do it and still show the relationship to the previous true information that was given before. And so then the 6th Thunder to me is well, there might have been some other documents that they put on the internet that could be considered part of that 4th Thunder, I guess. But and the 5th, meaning the Jesus one, I mean part of the 5th one, not the 4th one. But then the 6th one, I think, was the Heaven's Gate website and the development of the book, because the website has the contents of the book on it. Most of the book. I don't think everything is in there, but in the download, everything might be in there. But there are other documents that weren't included on the website or the book that Doe gave to Riccoti to publish, the way I understand it, which he did on Riccoti.com. And then Mark and Sarah went after him for doing that, and got him shut down after he left his vehicle by shutting down his leaving that to his vehicle's daughter through a lawsuit. Anyway, so, but that was the alternate, not alternate, but supplemental documents that had some very strong parts to them. But he didn't include that in the book for a reason. Because he was very detailed about every word in every paragraph of every document that was put in that book. I witnessed that. So I know that was the case. I witnessed that for years in his writing of 88 Update and the writing in the Beyond Human series, what he said in the videos, and then is putting together of the USA Today and the other ads, put in the magazines, put in magazines. Anyway, and so I think the Seventh Thunder was their exit, and the documents that they put out about that exit, which included the 1996 Planet About to Be Recycled, Last Chance to Evacuate Earth Before Recycling, and Doe's Final Exit, and the students' exit video. So it's basically 4 videos of information that that with the Beyond Human series and with the other documents, Undercover Jesus and extraterrestrial documents, all forms a more and more complete picture of everything they were about and who it applies to and who can choose for it not to apply to, and how people would go against them, and what to expect to some degree. And right, so I'm not sure if so the sixth angel sounding was the 2 witnesses, okay, during that time. The fifth angel sounding, I believe, was them coming by crashing their some of their more primitive spacecraft that they had. I believe that's the way Doe described it, even though he didn't make a big deal of that. He was never really. He always kind of approached that as he believed there was next level, and there were space aliens that actually tried to do a facsimile of the crashes that they decided to do, in order to the ones that had next level vehicles on next level spacecrafts that were coming to learn further lessons with him, so they would be sacrificing those vehicles that they had, because they would be getting a higher strata next level grown vehicle by completing the graduation task and becoming an adult member of the next level and having significant service as opposed to less significant service for the beginners. And even the less significant service is big service to the beginners. I consider myself at best a potential beginner, and this is one example of trying to give their information to others. I don't know for a fact that it's an example of what Doe would consider to be service, but I suspect it is. And I don't think that's a big stretch. But of course, that's not the only service we give. You know, we're not, you know, yeah, we are picking and choosing. I am picking and choosing. Um, and sure, you know, it becomes easy to say, well, I don't want to do that, but I do want to do this, or maybe I shouldn't even do that, and maybe I should do this, and you know, and you know what, and I frequently ask though, um, you know, whether there's something else I should be doing or could be doing, because it's not a should really, um, but he may have a whole list of things that he would like me to do, but I'm not tuning into him because for some reason I'm being blocked from seeing it, or I'm putting on my own block. My vehicle is blocking me, or influences are blocking me. But then they talk about in this Revelation 10 that you know it appears that they're talking about that students will be delivering, speaking about the next level, to speak forth by next level inspiration. Of course, you know, to somebody that doesn't think that Ti and Do were from the Creator's kingdom, they're going to think the opposite. That I'm speaking from, because I'm speaking from Ti and Do's perspective, trying to, that uh, that I'm off the track from what they believe is the track. And that's the way it works. And Do spoke to that many times, that that's going to be the case. But that's one indication of a number of them. In Revelation, in prophecy, in the audio tapes, in the book, in the letters to Mark and Sarah, and Riccodi and Wanodi, and in written documents in the Beyond Human series, where he's talking about over and over again individuals going after this information from them and bringing it to others and using and expressing ourselves to others. Becoming an instrument, making our vehicle into an instrument that does a certain amount of, you know, it's only a human that would dissect it and say, I think I could be wrong about the way I'm saying this, but only humans dissect things to such a degree to where they would say, oh, well, if you're only doing 1% of what you could do, that means you're, you know, with your time, therefore you're not doing the task because you're not giving that much time to it. But, you know, the next level doesn't get into that kind of thing, or if they do, they don't present it in that kind of a way. You know, so there is no limit, and there is somebody can do nothing. But I say that if somebody's even wearing a shirt that is showing something on it that could stimulate somebody to ask questions about it that could relate to Ti and Do, I think that's, you know, however tiny, or it can be big as well. It doesn't have to be tiny. It can look tiny, and the influencer can even say, don't do that. They didn't give you to do that. They didn't wear shirts with those things on it. Or they can say, you know, they can also say that you shouldn't be talking about it yourself. You should just publish or post what they have posted and not talk about it yourself. But there's a challenge to talking about it. because you can know that um, it's well, anybody that does take up trying to talk to other people about it, the best advice I can give you is to ask T and O before you write it, before you say it, and then as you're writing it to somebody, uh, ask, think about whether T and O would write that to that person. Um, and if there's any doubt about what you're saying, whether that would be the way that T and O would say it, by your best guess, then wait at least 24 hours before you send it to that other person. To give you a chance to become more objective about it. And now I don't do that very often. Sometimes I do. But I did do it in the classroom when I was writing to T&O, because that was the instruction we got for writing notes to T&O, even notes that they asked us to write to them, that they wanted to, you know, they wanted us to give it objective thought. Well, I went through Revelation 10, not that thoroughly, but if anybody has any questions about it, let me know, and then I'll try to be more thorough about that area in comments and things. But until that happens, I don't know if I'll go back to Revelation 10. So I'll go back to the chat, and then I'm going to end the stream. And actually, ending the stream means also turning on the slideshow again for the remainder of it. Okay, so and there's nothing new in the stream. So I guess it's updating, right? That's the other thing's update. Oh, cinematic was here. Oh, I see. Okay, there are some things in here. Oh, okay, good. So Bartlett Ferguson says, I would just love to have some kind of evidence that supports your beliefs. I could really get on board with this quite logical set of beliefs, but it's so hard to blindly follow anything or anyone. Well, yeah, the last thing I would want is for you to blindly follow anyone or anything.
Yeah, it's so rude to say that.
Well, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to say that, baby. But I don't think there's anything wrong with the question.
I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the question. I'm just saying for
Well,
somebody to say I have a hard time blindly following something, as if like what, you're blindly following it.
well, that can appear that way to somebody, that I'm blindly following it. The thing is, what happens is that, okay, if you maintain that desire to to have some kind of evidence that supports your beliefs, I would challenge you to just ask yourself, what would qualify as evidence? So, because how do I know what would be evidence for you? For me, I don't need to be standing in the rocket that I believe went in orbit around the moon, that sent the lander onto the moon to land. And even if they did some kind of mock-up studio stuff for some of that, or made a flag that didn't, blow in the wind because there was no wind. Even if they did things like that, uh, and even if they uh, do a certain amount of doctoring or enhancing of videos and things, I don't. It doesn't make sense to me that the event didn't happen. So I don't need any better evidence than what we got of that happening. And that's with a lot of things. You know what I mean? What people discover in microscopes and telescopes and I mean, I believe that there are scientists with telescopes and microscopes, and I've even played with those kind of tools. So I know those kind of tools exist, but to the extent that some individuals have knowledge about those things is only a belief of mine that they have that knowledge. And yet I don't think it's a belief that doesn't have a certain amount of um, less than the most accurate way of looking at things as a part of it, because the human condition is totally in a condition of discovery. And there are no absolutes that I'm aware of. I mean, yeah, there. So I say that, and I shouldn't say there are none that I'm aware of, because there are seeming to be absolutes, but we don't know that a different circumstance could be changed. The way the sun shines or whatever, or the way planets go around us, or the moon goes around the planet. If certain things were changed on the axis and so forth, that a whole bunch of things that we consider to be absolute in the laws of nature and physics and things wouldn't be happening anymore. Wouldn't be absolutes anymore. So, uh, so the way that you get evidence is by being willing, I think, to understand it. And you were expressed in the statement that you feel some of it has some logic associated with it. Quite logical set of beliefs. Well, that in itself is one form of evidence. Like Doe said on the Beyond Human series, that he actually had me read from one of the few things that Paul said that in his letters that was accurate. Oh, I shouldn't say few things. He might have said a lot of things that were accurate to that stage of development at that time for the capacity that Paul had at that point. But where he said that faith is the evidence of things unseen. So faith isn't blind. Faith is evidence of things that we otherwise can't see unless we strain to see them. See them meaning even understand them. It's just like somebody that doesn't know how to identify the speed of the hertz of the sound waves in the note A in Western musical language, which is 440 hertz, right? Okay, but they can't hear that tone. They don't know how to hear that tone. But does that tone exist in that frequency? And can other people hear it and recognize, oh, I understand that tone. That tone I relate to being 440 hertz according to this tuning fork that's tuned to 440 hertz. Uh, and so they can play music and they can match the sounds they make out of their instrument with that same note so that they're in tune with the other people playing that instrument. But then somebody else who you might consider to be tone deaf doesn't know how to make an instrument sound that same note, even though they're told that if you pluck this note when this note is tuned appropriately, it's going to make this tone sound, right? but they might not know how to distinguish that tone from another tone that well. Like I can't do that. Somebody could sing the note A, which would be on some degree of frequency of the chart of frequencies of our musical language notes, and I might think, that sounded like it might have been the fourth octave of the note C, or C sharp in the fourth octave, or the seventh octave, in hearing range. But if you go outside the human hearing range, we don't hear those frequencies. Some people might hear a little bit more than other people, but overall, humans aren't geared. They're not set up to hear all the frequencies that exist, and even the frequencies of thoughts we can't hear because our brains aren't evolved enough to actually be able to communicate accurately by thought. Because the next level didn't give us that ability. They designed us, they programmed us, our vehicles, to developmental programming to only be able to hear in certain frequencies. But we can expand that, or we can get more into the details of those frequencies and hear more of those frequencies. And that's why music is designed with color, modes, to the way that the frequencies are set up in chords and things. You got all different combinations that produce slightly different sounds. And so that would be like somebody that has that experience being able to talk to somebody about it that doesn't have that experience and tell them that if they dig into this more and more, they will develop that experience that they're coming from, that they have already developed. And so in the human kingdom, we have that, not just with the T and No information, but with a lot of information that, some people have a better grasp on than other people. And it doesn't make somebody lesser for having less grasp on certain information or certain concepts or certain ideas. The only thing that defines somebody is what they are, how much they are willing to expand their consciousness of certain ideas, and want to work to try to see if there is a higher level to this thinking, so that then they will, if they pursue it, and especially if they have the next level in mind as helping them, presumably thinking that the next level exists, at least that much to, which I'm doing to some degree too, because I don't have, evidence of the next level, like in a concrete way. And even that evidence, if we got it, our brains would explain it away after a period of time, if not immediately. Like people that have unusual sightings with UFOs or abduction experiences, and I've talked about how they got certain impressions and certain things happened and they interpreted them a certain way, and then later on they thought that that was really a blessing for me to, and now I can teach this, and so they adjusted to what was a difficult experience to them, and they adjusted to it to know more about it, and they could also be totally off track in terms of what the next level would say was what they were being given by that space alien or that discarnate. So I don't know. I think I'm saying too much about it right now, but so that's a sign to, I think, stop. So I don't know if that helps with that question, but I want to try. So I'll go to the next statement by Cinematic. I said, "Hi, Story. I hope you're well. It's been a while since I've been here, but I've been focusing on uni exams. I wanted to let you both know I'm off to Oxford to do my master's. After that, I hope to get back to learning about the stuff. Oh, that's interesting. Well, good luck. I don't know what uni exams are, but it sounds interesting, I guess.
University.
Oh, university.
Maybe.
Univers- University exams? Okay.
I think it's European.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I don't see any additional comments, but I'll be on long enough. And if you're still around and you hear that, my reading of it, you can let me know what kind of uni exams means. Um, and I think cinematic, with whatever you've learned about the next level through your own research or however that happened, um, uh, who knows how uh, you might learn more by doing whatever you're doing, because life has a way of bringing the truth to the surface, and the truest information to the surface to be examined. Not that it knocks you over and forces you to believe in it. It doesn't work that way with the next level. The lower forces work that way. They want you to, do what they say and only what they say. And you can see that through the governments. When the government's telling you how to think, um, there's something wrong with that. I mean, if they're giving you something that's, how to stay out of a car accident, I don't think that's a bad thing, even though it's coming from the government. To me, that's a good thing. But if you're telling you something that you might believe so that they can uh, uh, go to war somewhere, that would be an extreme example, but one that's current actually, because they just made the draft automatic to be signed up for the young people of the nation. Then to me that's manipulation. Unless they give you all the facts and so you can make up your own decision whether you want to support what they're doing. But they don't do that. They tell you very few facts, and they tell you only the facts they want to tell you to make you think that you're supporting them. And there's a lot of examples of this. I'm not going to go through them now. Bartlett Ferguson says, I didn't mean it like Kathy is suggesting. I'm the only blind one attempting to follow. You may be very clearly seeing things that I'm not able to. Yeah, I don't think she meant it that way. Whatever, you're clarifying that it wasn't, that the use of the blind wasn't referring to me or her, I guess, because Kathy is listening here. But,
I
and
think I was
participating.
just referring to anybody in general. Just by believing something, whether you have absolute proof or not, doesn't mean you're blindly following something.
Yeah, see, we're sensitive to certain terms. There's no question about it. If for anybody that gets on the end of this conversation pertaining to the T and Do story with their information and put yourself out there for other people to hear talk, and when you hear what the media says over and over again, that all the followers are blind followers. So certain terminology touches my funny bone, so to speak. It's not really a funny bone, but it's like my alert that I don't want to be seen in that light because I'm not a blind follower the way that it's depicted. Because the next level wouldn't have any blind followers anyway. I know you're not saying that, Bartlett Ferguson. You clarified what you meant by it, and I appreciate that, hearing that. Because I'm the only blind one that is blind to, still blind to uh, Tiendo's reality in ways that um, I'm sure, demonstrate themselves at times. But relative to T and Do, they're the only ones that have correct vision. We're all in degrees of coming out of blindness, but it depends on what kind of blindness we're hanging on to. And uh, so I mean that's something to to be asking T and O, that they even gave us to ask the next level. What ways am I being blinded? Could be something to ask the next level. Show me the areas where I'm blind to your truth, to your reality. And then a crew, when they get a genuine question from somebody, they'll I think you don't give up on it. You don't just ask it one time and expect them to. They want to see that you're serious, and so they probably got it set up somehow to where their computer systems alert them to somebody who's serious by the brightness of the light that goes off when somebody is asking them a question. That's just an analogy that Doe gave us for how members of the next level were operating on their spacecrafts in their lab experiences with the laboratory being how to help humans at this time. Then right, you can't assume that I'm clearly seeing things either. I'm attempting to, and you can take what I say, and as you do your own research, you'll either find that I was expressing it close enough to what Tiendo said for the context, or maybe I was missing something, and you can always bring that to my attention, and then I can maybe come out of some degree of blindness that I still have. Bartlett says, okay, I get exactly what you're sensitive to in certain terms. Thank you. Appreciate that. And Mr. Sorkiller said, we are approaching the 30th anniversary of what happened in 1997. How would you like people to remember that moment based on your point of view?
What do you mean we're approaching it?
30th anniversary? 1927, right?
They left March 26, 1997, right? I mean, that's when they were discovered.
Right, so the 30th anniversary would be 27.
Yeah,
I
there's
guess.
still a couple of years.
Yeah, but I gotta understand. So, yeah, so.
But we just had a meeting on the anniversary.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, the way we celebrated the last two anniversaries, if you want to call it celebration, it's not really a celebration, but at the same time it is, because we had a circumstance where we were able to give a public meeting, and in three different cities actually, around that time, and after that time, but of the anniversary days themselves, where we answered questions and talked about Tiendo and our experiences, and the parts that the media, some of the parts of that the media got all out of whack. And so that's the way I feel like I want to celebrate every day, is by offering somebody something that they might not get from their own investigation, or might lead them to further investigating everything that Tiendo taught and said to whatever degree they can for as long as they're living in their vehicles. So that's to me the so yeah, I don't really think in terms of how I would like people to remember that moment. I can only really respond to how I want to remember that moment, and how and so yeah, in a sense, I would like people to hear a lot more about it than what the media said. Okay, so that's what I would like people to remember. That well, I mean, they're not going to remember something that they don't know about, except in the context of each person potentially has a soul that's associated with that vehicle, our vehicles. That soul itself has a certain amount of memory of their next level experiences in the past when they were associated with a vehicle, trying to take over a vehicle at that time. And so so then so I do like the idea that by my talking about what Tiendo said, I could potentially be touching certain keywords that will relate to certain ideas and concepts and understanding and beliefs that that soul already had from past experiences, but hadn't been brought into the conscious mind of the vehicle that is hearing it at this time. So that they may think, oh, that's interesting. I wonder what else they said about that subject or this subject or blah, blah, blah. And so that basically gives somebody a little help to move into re engaging with Tino's information more than they might have been without the help. But, however, the next level has ways that they don't need someone like me doing this kind of task, even though they can take advantage of it. But if I wasn't doing it, they would have some way, or maybe they already have some way, by these documentaries keep on coming out, over and over again, to where somebody sees it for the sixth time, and that sixth time, because of their experiences in the world, they're ready to look at it and say, huh, I wonder what that really did. That was interesting when I just didn't pay attention to it 3 years ago. But now it's like, that's really interesting. And I'm going to go look in. And now I have the time to look into it. So I'm going to look into it. So that's what I hope for people, to make their own decisions, to make their own choices, to learn about it at their own pace and the way that they want, and apply what they want to apply, and communicate with the next level, with the older members, with Tiendo directly, using their names. And it doesn't mean they're going to show up to you in your dreams necessarily, but they might. But they're not going to tell you what to do. They're not going to tell you to, go off yourself, your vehicle. They're not going to tell you that. Because they don't do it that way. It's free will. They want you to choose everything that happens to you, and everything that you don't want to have in your consciousness, and everything that you do want in your consciousness. All right, folks, so I tried to give it a decent effort, and thank Kathy for participating with me to help me with different things and to come up. Anything else you think I should talk about? So I'm just going to say goodnight, folks, and I'll be trying to do something again soon.